when that wire's still in your phone, so it's...
No, that's fine.
Oh, what's that there?
No. Pen to level it up and open the mic up. That doesn't work. Morning, folks. Morning. Lorraine, Alex. Morning, Mr. Milligan. Missed your call. That's fine. It really is. Morning, Mr. Milligan. Missed your call. I'll phone you back when this is over. Morning, Nancy, Brian, Kirsty. Where are we? 82 getting there. Ian, Karen. Good morning, Robert. Morning, Kevin. Morning, Brian. Morning, Shazza. Morning, Stuart. Morning, Eileen. Morning, James. Morning, Stuart. Tina. Sheila. Morning, Nori. Morning, Doug. You're number 100 a day, so let's get this broadcast underway. Indytruck, Davy in the truck. Coming to you today from the New House Industrial Estate in North Lanarkshire, where it is overcast, dry and 16 degrees. Clammy like hell. That's the weather forecast for New House in North Lanarkshire. You want to know what the weather's like where you are? Look at the bloody windy. Alright, let's get the news review underway. As you notice, I'm wearing my Gregory Pecks, folks. Give me a better chance at reading the bloody stuff, alright? This is the news review for Monday, the 16th of the 5th, 2022. Now, Monday started with a few interesting stories in the rags. Bojo threatens EU with breaking the law over the NI protocols, risking a trade war with the EU and sanctions from the US. Sweden joins Finland in bid to join NATO. That gets interesting further into the report. Stuffed shirt Lord Offord denies public were conned over Brexit. And Tories greenlight sanction busting flights from Inverness to Moscow. Alright, so let's get back to that. Bojo, we already know that he's pissing about with the NI protocols and going to break international law on a treaty he signed and put to the electorate in December 2019. Okay. On Sweden and Finland in bid to join NATO. Well, that was expected and it was right on schedule. Yesterday was the 16th, so the announcement was made. Stuffed shirt Lord Offord denies public were conned over Brexit. Well, you've got to remember that Malcolm Offord is an advertising agent. So, you know, and he's being paid by the British state to advertise the British state, so he's not going to say the British state conned the people. Right, as to Tories greenlight sanction busting flights from Inverness to Moscow, the Department of Transport tried to blame the airport. But it turns out it was Westminster's Transport Minister Grant Sharp who gave the go-ahead. So flights from Inverness to Moscow are now on the cards because the UK and the Tory government, who are financed extensively by Russian oligarchs, need to be able to go and visit the party's money in Moscow. Right. And the other story in the rags was that only a quarter of eligible young people have taken up free bus travel for the under-22s. But let's face it, when the programme was launched in January, we were in the middle of the Omicron variant, and of course it will take a wee while for parents and any other guardians that may be involved to get these kids their travel cards. All right. Right, let's move on. Monday started here in Scotland with more signs that Poverty Pie Sarwar is off his meds. Right, Poverty Pie writes a piece in the Herald that says that he's cleaned up the toxicity of the party and its previous leaders, and he's now preparing to go into government at the next Scottish general election. There's always one, isn't there? Anyway, Mr. Sarwar made the claims after his party overtook the Tories in the recent local council elections. Poverty Pie is clearly delusional. Mr. Sarwar led his party to the worst election results of the devolution era in 2021. And the Labour Party's showing in the recent council elections was Labour's second worst council election result in 50 years. If Labour thought overtaking the Tories in the council election is a sign of a recovery, they haven't been paying bloody attention. It's no hard to overtake the Tories now. They're even more toxic than Labour. Right, anyway, Labour are still irrelevant in Scotland and will continue to be for so long as they take an anti-democratic stand against the democratic will of the Scottish people. Poverty Pay preparing the zombie party for government is a bit like Davy trying to wake up a dead body. It's not going to happen. Right, moving on. Monday, it's announced that Babcock Marine in Rosyth wins 10-year contract to service the Navy's 2 Elizabeth-class aircraft carriers. The 10-year contract is worth £30 million and will secure 300 jobs for a decade. Now, would Scottish independence change the situation in Rosyth? Nope. Why? Because Babcock's a private company, a private commercial company, and it would sue Westminster for breach of contract. Also, the ships were put together at Rosyth, so Rosyth is the best place to maintain them. Right, moving on. Monday. And the governor of the Bank of England tells the Treasury Select Committee that there could be an apocalyptic increase in food prices. Mr. Bailey blamed the war in Ukraine for the food price inflation. Funny thing that, because yesterday, in a TV interview, the CEO of Sainsbury's tells Sky News it's Brexit and no the war in Ukraine, alright? And the reason why he's saying that is because although wheat prices and certain commodity prices that come from Ukraine have went up by 25-26%, the UK doesn't get its wheat from Ukraine, it gets its wheat from America and Canada. And yes, it might be a little bit more expensive, but not quite that much. Anyhow, Mr. Bailey, the Governor of the Bank of England, then tells the Treasury Select Committee that inflation to reach 10% by August, and that the UK could be going into recession. He also tells the Select Committee he expects high unemployment as the economy contracts. Now there's a Davy says here, could be going into recession. Heard that. Will be going into recession. Market economies only work when people have money to spend into the market. And by the way, if we go into 3 quarters of a stagnant growth, then it's no a recession. Then we hit a depression. Alright, moving on. Monday, and Ofgem announces it's to review the energy cap every 3 months instead of every 6 months. Now, Ofgem say it's to pass on any drop in wholesale energy prices to the customers faster. But that works 2 ways. Alright, so if the prices increase, then you're going to see the increase passed on every 3 months as opposed to every 6 months. You know, now energy prices are expected to rise by another £600 in October. Then the price is expected to drop by £300 in January. But that's not good to us if our electricity costs have already went up by £1,800 in a year. Right, moving on. Monday, and the cuckoos in the nest are bitching about the First Minister's visit to the United States. Tory MSPs even sniped that the First Minister had abandoned being First Minister and local issues to embark on a foreign visit. Labour claimed it was a waste of taxpayers' money. The First Minister hit back, telling the cuckoos in the nest via an article in the Times that it is imperative that the Scottish Government of the day and its ministers promote Scotland's interests around the globe when they're on their travels. The cuckoos in the nest and Westminster don't like it when Scotland's distinctive voice is heard around the globe. As far as the colonialists are concerned, Mother England speaks for us all. Anyhow, while the cuckoos in the nest are yapping from the sidelines, the Speaker of the US House of Representatives is on television in the States presenting the First Minister to the people of America and is welcoming the First Minister to the capital, Washington, D.C., on behalf of the US government. Now, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, spoke highly of the First Minister saying that she was a world-class leader and an inspiration to young ladies around the world, and that the work that she'd done with the United States on climate change and on the COVID pandemic had been most valuable. So while the cuckoos and the nest are sniping for the sidelines, the First Minister is having her praise sung by the Speaker of the House of Representatives in America, and she's been welcomed on a state visit to America, right? Now, Miss Sturgeon will be addressing the, where are we? The Brookland Institute of DC, and to promote Scotland as a test bed for green energy programmes. Miss Sturgeon will also be stressing that world leaders need to step up to the plate and commit to the commitments they made at COP26 in Glasgow last November. Okay, so while the cuckoos and the nests are sniping back here that the First Minister's visit's no worth it and it's a waste of taxpayers' money, well, let me tell you, the Scottish Government have been visiting the States since devolution started, and they have brought back billions of pounds worth of investment into Scotland from the States. So these visits are not a waste of time, and they are not a waste of taxpayers' money. And as I say, the First Minister was at the Brookland Institute last night promoting Scotland as a test bed for green technologies. Okay. Right, moving on. Monday, Bojo the Clown is in Northern Ireland to speak to the political parties. Bojo meets Sinn Féin, the DUP, the Alliance Party, the UUP and the SDLP at Hillsborough Castle. For talks, Bojo tells the DUP that a legislative answer to the so-called problems with the protocols is on its way, and that the DUP should nominate a speaker and get Stormont up and running again. But the DUP are no playing, because they're being fooled a couple of times by Bojo and lied to a couple of times by Bojo. So the DUP are just not playing. Alright, now after meeting, the parties in Northern Ireland, including the DUP, were said to be frustrated and confused and had no idea what Bojo's tack is on the protocols. Now, in a press conference after the meeting, Bojo tells the press that Westminster had no intention of scrapping the protocols, only improving them. At that point, hardline unionists in Northern Ireland go up in bloody flames. They are not chuffed, because the hardline unionists want rid of the protocol altogether. Now, 53 of the recently elected MLAs, as they're called, members of the Legislative Assembly, to Stormont Assembly, are in favour of the NI protocols, with only 37 against. The people and businesses in the NI in Northern Ireland also like the protocols. Northern Irish businesses have already realigned their supply chain and claim that the protocols had increased food price, and claims that the protocols by unionists had increased food prices in Northern Ireland also seem not to be true, as the UK government's assessment of things in Northern Ireland show that food prices in Northern Ireland are 8% lower than in mainland UK. Alright. Northern Ireland is seeing massive inward investment at the moment, as companies seek to gain the advantage of access to both the EU single market as well as the relatively easy access to the UK market as well. Now, if Bojo and his criminal cabal do unilaterally make changes to the protocols, the risk of trade war with the EU and sanctions from the US are very, very high. And moving on, Monday evening rolls round and Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary, is on the phone for a call with Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the US House of Representatives. The reason for the call is the US fears that the UK's plans to abandon or alter the protocols could endanger the Good Friday Agreement, a treaty the US helped to broker and who are also guarantors of the treaty. Liz Truss tells Ms Pelosi that the UK's action on the protocol is to protect the Good Friday Agreement. But we all know, as does Nancy Pelosi, that Liz Truss lied to Nancy Pelosi last night. Because when Bojo came back with his oven-ready deal and put it before the electorate in 2019 December 2019, the general election. As that bill was making its passage through Westminster, the DUP and Sir Geoffrey Donaldson asked Bojo if the protocols were in line with the Good Friday Agreement, to which Bojo, the clown, told the Commons and the wider public that the protocols were perfectly aligned with the Good Friday Agreement. Now, the protocols have also been challenged in court by unionists in Northern Ireland, and the protocols and the unionists were told by the courts that the protocols are in adherence to the Good Friday Agreement. So Liz Truss just told a porky pies to the Speaker of the House of Representatives in the UAE. Silly Liz Truss, because Miss Pelosi will be aware that Miss Truss is lying to her. So if they do piss about, then the US will come down heavy on them, especially as our Foreign Secretary has just lied to the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Wow. Right, moving on Monday and back here in Scotland, and more problems with the trains due to a lack of train drivers. ScotRail intend to cut back services by a third in the short term to help alleviate the problem. The lack of drivers is down to the pandemic, with little or no new drivers being trained during the pandemic. The situation is exacerbated by train drivers, by the Train Drivers Union ASLEF having drivers on a work to rule programme, meaning no overtime, and they are balloting train drivers for strike action over a pay dispute. ASLEF, the pay dispute is because train drivers were only offered 2.2% by ScotRail, and as we all know, inflation is at 7%, so 2.2% would see them taking a 4.8% pay cut at this time. So more troubles on the train, but Davy doesn't care because Davy doesn't ride the train. Sorry if you guys do. You know. Right, moving on and into, let's have a little look at what's going on in Ukraine. Ukraine forces leave the Azovstal steelworks in Mariupol. 264 men and women were taken under a escort by Russian troops to the Russian-held town of Novazovsk in eastern Ukraine. President Zelensky praised Mariupol's evacuation and said operations to save the defenders of Mariupol had started, but added that it would take a while because it looks as if it's going to have to be a prisoner exchange. Okay. Also, Ukraine General Staff says some fighters remain in the steel plant and operations to rescue them are underway. Also Monday, NATO Secretary General says Jens Stoltenberg, says Russia's war in the Ukraine isn't going well and that Ukraine could win the conflict. I doubt that if Russia puts his mind to it. Anyway, British Military Defence Secretary, the idiot Williams, says Russia has lost a third of its ground forces since the conflict began in February. Right, Monday, Turkey's President Erdogan says Turkey will veto Sweden and Finland's attempts to join NATO. Meanwhile, Russian President Putin says he has no problem with Finland and Sweden joining NATO, as long as there is no NATO build-up of military in either nation. So we've got the Turkish president threatening to veto Sweden and Finland's attempt to join NATO, and we've got Putin saying, it's all right, just don't put any weapons in either of these countries because they're close to my border. So there you have it. Right, they're the stories I picked out to talk about for yesterday. There was a lot went on yesterday, but I think they were the main ones. Off Jen pissing about with the cap. We've got the Bank of England warning us that there's going to be catastrophic or apocalyptic rises in food prices. We've got Sainsbury's boss blaming it on the Ukraine. We've got the Bank of England blaming it on Brexit, and the Bank of England saying it's Ukraine. Alright, what else did we have? We've got the First Minister getting our praises sung in in America. We've got Russia saying they don't mind Sweden joining. Okay. And by the way, while this is all going on, believe it or not, NATO are actually carrying out the biggest exercises that they've ever conducted in the Balkan states, and the exercise is underway in Estonia and Latvia. Talk about poking the bear, eh? Mental. Right, let's move on to this morning, what the papers have to say, because time's moving on, and Davy boy needs to get a move on. Alright, so let's move to this morning and see what the papers have to say. The Scotsman has ScotRail to slash services amid driver strike threat. We've just spoke about the trains. The Herald goes on. Tycoon was told refund pledge not essential for ferry contracts. We're back on. The Herald seems to be like a dug with a bone with the ferry contracts, you know. But what was interesting about it, I actually missed a bit about Sarwar yesterday, so I'll fill you in on it now. His own union, the GMB, have told Sarwar to knock it in the head because he's making the yards less viable, and his political attacks on the SNP over the yards could see 300 men put on the dole, or 300 workers put on the dole. So the GMB gives a delusional Sarwar about up the Bahookie yesterday. Preparing Labour to be in the next government of Scotland. What a spanner. Right, the eye has I don't want to lie anymore. And it's the story of a 17-year-old Blackpool player who has come out as openly gay. I don't see what the problem is here. I mean, it's not been illegal to be gay for years, and who really cares about people's sexuality? What do they do behind their own door? Who cares? Right, the Times has petrol firm profiteers fails to pass on duty cut. So apparently some petrol firm out there who runs forecourts didn't pass on the duty cut for the Chancellor. The Metro goes on, food price spike alert, and that's Andrew Bailey, the Governor of the Bank of England, telling us that there's going to be apocalyptic rises in the cost of food. As I say, that wasn't the only thing he said, but he also tells us recession's likely and unemployment is going to rise. Alright, the Daily Fail goes on. Bank chief, families are facing food price apocalypse. The Tory Graph has, bank chief, food price rise will be apocalyptic. The Looney Rag, the Express says, Indy Scotland to boost West claims naive Sturgeon. What's naive about it? Bojo's shunned like a piece of crap everywhere he goes on the planet. Whereas Miss Sturgeon, who doesn't appear to be naive and appears to be an accomplished statesperson in the eyes of the world, is welcomed everywhere. But you know, as a right-wing loony rag, between that and the Fail, you don't have to get a laugh each day. Right, the National has, First Minister meets with top US officials for talks, and so she did. She was welcomed on a state visit yesterday. That was interesting. If you want to see it, pop onto my timeline. You'll get a link to Nancy Pelosi welcoming Nicola Sturgeon to the United States. As I say, very, very flattering. So it was. Right, now let's see what the Looney Rag the Star has today. It's got You're Not Singing Anymore. Pub in Seville cancels karaoke night so fans can watch game. Aye, well, if I ran a pub in Seville and all, I'd be cancelling everything to try and get Rangers fans through the door. Because you know us jocks, we like a wee swally when we're abroad. They'll make an absolute killing out the Rangers fans. So they will. Right, that's what I've got for you today, folks. I hope you found it entertaining and I hope you found it informative. Big day yesterday, as I say, Ofgem fecking about with the electricity price cap, or the energy price cap, with the Andrew Bailey, Bank of England, telling us that it's going to be doom and gloom. And by the way, I don't know if you know this, but most economic forecasters are expecting this downturn the last 10 years. The last time we had inflation like this, as you'll remember, back in the 80s, it was at over 10% from about 1983 to about 1993. So things are not looking good. Contractions on the economy. Unemployment's expected to rocket, and this recession depression that's coming is expected to last 10 years, according to top economists. Not good news, folks. But hell, one does one's best. One can only tell you what's laid in front of one. All right. Right, the usual stuff. All right. Where are we? Aye. It's time to put partisan politics back in your pocket, and it doesn't matter which side of this argument you're on, the great constitutional debate. Get your arse out there and win hearts and minds, and we'll see who comes out in front. All right. Learn your how you gonnies to counter how you no gonnies. All right. Where else are we? Aye, support the independent vloggers, bloggers. You know the stuff. Broadcasting Scotland, Caledon Media, Indy Live, all that sort of stuff. There's some crank stuff out there. Maximilian Robespierre, full of a different bias. Truth to Power's quite good as well. So there's a lot of good vloggers and bloggers out there. If they've got a crowdfunder going and you've got a couple of shekels to spare, throw them in the pot. These people do great investigative work. Now, health messaging, face coverings in enclosed public spaces, i.e. soaps, that sort of thing, pubs, canteens, when you're moving about. Clean hands, surfaces regularly. Use your heed when it comes to social distancing. And if you're still testing, submit your test results, alright? Now, you guys have an absolutely wonderful day, and we'll be back to reporting whatever bad bloody news comes out today. Although I have to say, somebody called the nurse, Kazana Sarwar's flipped his lid. Poverty Pie has flipped it. Have a nice day.